All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us and participating in the live shows. We're really excited to be here today. This is going to be a really fun show. We've got Reyah Carlson on the show, and I heard of her work many, many years ago about Bee Venom therapy. And this is going to be an interesting show because, in Extreme Health Radio, what we're trying to do is we are trying to bring forth healing modalities that you maybe have never heard of. And you may not have heard of something called the Crown of Thorns or the Bee Venom therapy, or just recently we did a show all about urine therapy that's available on our YouTube channel. So, there's a lot of unique ways for us to be able to help our body to heal. And that's our goal, is to bring these modalities and these methods and these concepts out to people so that we could learn more and use different techniques and modalities to help our bodies to heal. So Rhea's been working at this for, 30 years, her whole life, helping people, and has administered thousands and thousands upon thousands of stings to herself and to her patients. And so this is going to be a cool show. We do broadcast live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we're doing shows at 10:45 a.m. Pacific time. So if you guys want to join the live shows, it would be really fun to have you a part of what we're doing here. So if you go to our website, you can see we have Dr. Stephen Gundry. He's going to be coming on next. Let me bring our website back into the feed here so that you guys could see it. We've got Dr. Stephen Gundry coming up. And we're going to be talking with him about, he's the author of a book called The Plant Paradox, and we're going to be talking with him about lectins and food that you think is supposedly good for you and why it might be damaging and ruining your gut. Then we're going to have Patrick McGowan on, the power of oxygen for healing. That's going to be really cool. Stephanie Seneff is going to be on, and we're going to talk about glyphosates, autoimmune diseases, which we'll talk about today as well. But we're going to talk about her work with glyphosates, congenital defects, and cancer, and the connection between glyphosates, Roundup, and this whole issue that we had recently with Monsanto losing the lawsuit for $289 million with regards to a guy being diagnosed with terminal cancer. So, and then we'll be talking with Angel Howerton about her healing uterine cancer naturally, and Dr. Kayla Daniels about detoxification. So if you guys want to join the live shows, you can go to extremehealthradio.com and you can find out what we're doing and when we're live and all of that good stuff. And you can join and ask and participate on the live shows. So let me turn Reyah Carlson's audio up. And thank you so much, Reyah, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited you're here, and I've been familiar with your work for a long time, and I'm just really excited to talk about Bee Venom therapy and how you got started with this. And so, share a little bit about how you got started with all this and how long you've been working with bees.
Well, I started working actually with bees when I was 12. It was something that fascinated me to no end. Now, as far as the apitherapy or the bee sting therapy part of it went, I did not become interested in it until the early 1980s, when a man had come to my door in Vershire, Vermont with a jar in his hand, and he'd asked for a jar of bees. And I told him that I did not sell bees, that I sold honey. And then I said, the bees aren't going to make honey for you in the jar. And he said that he was stinging himself, that he had multiple sclerosis. So that was my first introduction to it. I really did not know a whole lot about it at the time. There was not a whole lot of information about it. Interestingly enough, though, this man had been going to Middlebury, Vermont, to receive his bee stings 3 times a week, which is a good 2.5-hour drive from where we lived. And he was getting stings from who was known as the godfather of bee venom therapy in this country at the time, was Charles Mraz. And he was being successfully treated for MS. I further on went to learn more about bee venom therapy, especially when I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in the early 2000s, which later turned on to actually be Lyme disease that I had contracted probably in 1980 or 81 while living in the Northwest Hills of New Milford, Connecticut. So that was how I got involved with bee venom therapy. And then of course, of course, the internet had started to really take off, and more information was available to just about anything and everything that you wanted to know about. And I did find the American Apitherapy Society, and I had actually gone in 2001 to Fort Mitchell, Kentucky, where I had taken an intensive course in apitherapy and really started to learn about it. My intentions were not really for stinging other people. It was for stinging myself and having others help me to receive my bee stings. And it just grew from there. There was a newspaper article in Ventura that had come out, and that just led from one thing to another, and had just taken over on a national level. I was in newspapers, and then National Geographic contacted me, and the Discovery Health Channel, and just all which, I just at that point was no longer able to just be stinging myself. I had been stinging hundreds of people, actually thousands of people. I think the number is over 5,000 at this point, 20 plus years later. I have intentionally received myself 1,000 bee stings.
Sorry, you cut out there, Reyah, real quick. How many did you say? 30,000?
No. For myself, I quit keeping track of my stings after I had actually reached the 25,000 mark. And that was a few years ago.
My goodness, 25,000 stings. And I think I was listening to you on another podcast, and you were talking about you used to do it every day, but now you do it a few times a week. Is that right?
Well, for myself, I'm only stinging on occasion. If I feel like I have some knee pain or some neck pain, I'll address it with the stings. But before, I was stinging myself every single day, or having some every week, and then now it's just on occasion. Now, for other people that come into my home and receive bee stings, it is 3 times a week. I see patients on a regular basis, Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays.
My goodness. So what kind of people come to see you typically? Is there kind of an overarching type of person that comes to see you?
Everything from cancer to Lyme disease to multiple sclerosis to arthritic problems. I mean, it's just all sorts of different physical and health issues that people are coming to see me for.
Mm-hmm. Isn't it amazing? There's so many different ways to work with the body. I was thinking about this the other day that, it's fascinating to me that when you go to, not to disparage medical doctors, but, they're not working with a whole lot of tools because of their standard of care. Every doctor has to operate within that little tiny window of here's what I can do and here's what I can't do. But when you open I guess if you open up your mind to the idea of natural therapies, what's so cool is, you have things like Bee Venom therapy out there that, maybe no one's ever even heard of before, but could be dramatically helpful for someone. And it's just, in the medical world, they wouldn't touch it because there hasn't been all the funded studies and all that kind of stuff. But when you go into the natural world, you have so many different tools at your tool chest that's for healing. It's just incredible.
Right. I look at a beehive as a medicine chest. There's so many things in the hive that can have medicinal properties, and it is not just the bee stings. But like you were saying, where doctors, it is that they are not generally taught what people know of as alternative methods of healing. They're becoming more open to it. One of the cancer patients that I do have, his oncologist actually has read some research, but he could not recommend it to anybody or his patient. The good news is, however, he has documented every single thing that this individual is doing. And good news is that last week he was actually given a 1-year cancer-free diagnosis. He did have surgery, all of the cancer was, and the oncologist had suggested that he do follow up with chemo and radiation therapy. He opted out. He's done apitherapy for 1 year now, and he is at the 1-year mark where the doctor has stated that if the cancer was going to come back in a vengeance, it would have by now. So this is good news of healings on so many different levels, and it isn't just the cancer, but it is people that are consistent and really do stick with this, and they generally do get not only relief from the disease or the condition, but from the condition itself.
Mm. Can you say what kind of cancer this person has?
Well, originally it had started as a non-aggressive form of prostate cancer, and they were monitoring it. And then all of a sudden it had turned from a non-invasive to a very aggressive form of cancer and had actually spread up into the bladder. But his bladder is still completely intact. And last check, the cancer levels are at 0. There's no detectable cancer. So now instead of him being checked every 3 months, his doctor has now asked him to come back in 6 months. And like I said, the good news is his doctor is documenting this.
Wow.
Everything's done, and it really doesn't matter. But when a doctor is documenting, that's great. And I do work with a lot of doctors. I've had doctors refer patients with Lou Gehrig's disease to me because, there's really not much that can be done for Lou Gehrig's. So, it is becoming something that is more open. Therapy. The Chinese have documentation which dates back about 3,000 years or more of actual sting therapy. And it is possible that it is actually the first form of acupuncture.
Yeah, I've heard you mention that before. It's just fascinating. Do you think that the power of apitherapy is strong enough to the point where someone could use that as their sole way they want to heal, or is it an adjunctive sort of protocol that you would use alongside of lots of other things, do you think?
I believe it depends on what the condition is and how long they have had it for. The earlier you catch them in treatment. Now, with my treatment in Lyme disease, my own personal treatment, I combined antibiotic therapy with bee sting therapy, but I personally do not believe that with one or the other only that I would have made the progress that I did make. I believe they were working very well. I mean, when you understand the physiological effects of bee venom and antibiotics, I mean, antibiotics when taken orally or through intravenous solutions, you have to have good circulation to start with in order for the delivery system, which is your blood, to get to areas of circulation. Bee venom in itself, in its whole form, is a vasodilator, opens up capillaries, that restores circulation and brings blood to the areas that normally don't have a lot of good blood circulation. And in the Lyme disease spirochete, it likes to get deep down and cause a whole lot of blood circulation. So I really think the two of these things actually work very well together. And it doesn't have to be one or the other in alternative medicine. I believe there is a bridge that alternatives can work well with mainstream medicine.
Yeah, I completely concur. And, you can also you can combine bee venom therapy with natural solutions or, more of the medical side as well. So you can kind of combine it with lots of other ways. So how does it, like what are some of the applications someone would use bee venom therapy on an area of the body where they would need like increased blood flow? Because I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, if you had maybe a surgery or something like that, would it be a good instance to use in that case?
Yeah. So in fact, one of my clients actually recently had knee replacement surgery, and the expected healing time and through the physical therapy has been cut in half. And again, documentation by physical therapists and the doctor by applying bee venom. And when I say areas of compromised circulation, and it's very common in people that are diabetic, this is why they start losing their feet, they're having amputations up to the knee, is because the disease actually causes issues with circulation, and they get infections, and there is not a good enough blood flow to get into these areas for healing. So what bee venom will actually do is it restores the circulation to these areas that have been compromised. I have many diabetics that I have given stings to, with great results in increasing blood circulation. I have an uncle that had a gangrened area on his shin, and he was going to the hospital to have it debrided, and it was not successful. They were debriding it almost every day, and that, along with antibiotics, it was just not healing up. And then after 6 weeks of bee sting therapy and applications of honey and propolis, which is another substance that bees make, this area was completely closed up and healed over. So this is another instance of apitherapy. It wasn't just the bee venom. It was actually taking some raw honey, mixing it or combining it with some propolis tincture and putting a gauze over it, and then applying bee stings around the area. So there you have it.
So your uncle had gangrene on his foot or on his hands or
It
something?
was more towards the shin.
Wow, that's really a strange place. Usually gangrene, isn't it usually on the very ends of the extremities?
Well, for diabetics, it is. I mean, that usually is. But some sort of staph infection that he had contracted, and it wasn't healing, and it was right borderline gangrene. There was gangrenous tissue there.
Wow.
And in the debridement process, they were actually cutting the tissue out in hopes that it would heal up and be replaced with healthy tissue with antibiotic therapy. It just was not happening.
Wow. So within the case of your uncle, how much application, like what was the actual protocol that you used with him?
If I remember correctly, his initial treatment was 6 bee stings to the area, around and on, and then applying some honey. And this went on for about 6 weeks. And it was, I mean, you could tell, I mean, it looked horrible after I had stung it. It swelled up, it was festered up. This is all part of the normal healing process in something like that. And after about 3 weeks, it calmed down, started to level out, and then actually close up and heal. Wow, and by 6 weeks, it was closed over. It was completely healed up with really nice pink granulated tissue.
That is incredible. Incredible. So how much of that do you think could be the result of the bee venom therapy as opposed to his own healing, his body healing, do you think?
Well, bee venom actually is a twofold healing, because you have the action of the venom itself, which is bacteriostatic. It kills virus, it kills bacteria. It doesn't care what kind it is. It just does that. It also causes some destruction to cell tissue, but the cell tissues that are restored or grow back are actually healthy, normal tissue. The second part of bee venom therapy is, like you said, the actual body's response to that. If you have an immune system, you will benefit from bee venom therapy. You are stimulating the immune system to produce substances, cortisol being one of them, to aid in healing. So it was a twofold healing. I call bee venom twofold healing because, like I said, you've got the action of the venom, and then you have the body's reaction to the venom.
Mm. Yeah. Have you ever worked with anyone? I know you've talked before about this, but have you ever worked with anybody that has had a really, really, really bad allergic reaction where you have to use the EpiPen and things like that? Or has it been pretty mild with your patients?
In over 5,000 people that I've administered stings to, I have never had to use epinephrine. However, I do keep epinephrine within reach. I have six EpiPens right here in the house. Always within reach, and liquid Benadryl. I mean, those are the two things that you need to do. And there are ways to, prevent allergic reaction from happening. I mean, I have my rules. You have to have eaten something, and you have to take vitamin C, which fuels your adrenal glands to produce cortisol. In the severe, if you want to call them severe allergic reactions that I have actually seen, where a person turns funny color and passes out, I've seen it a few times, and the common denominator with all of these individuals were they were stung on an empty stomach and they had not taken vitamin C. So I have never seen it again. When I keep a bowl of fruit in the house, I have honey, I've got vitamin C. If you have not taken it within the last hour and a half, I insist that you eat something and take your vitamin C. And I also suggest that to beekeepers too, that go out and work with bees. Make sure you do it on a full stomach and take some vitamin C with you.
Yeah, interesting. So you mentioned earlier you're cutting out a little bit before the kind of audio and video cut out a little bit. You were mentioning before about the Chinese and how, possibly it's going back, 3,000, 4,000 years of them using bees to heal. Has it been used in other cultures, or is it just the Chinese, or has it been used around the world in ancient times, do you think?
I don't know about how far back. I believe the Chinese writings are probably the oldest. There are Egyptian, there is documentation in Egypt, there's documentation in Russia, China, Romania, Germany. Germany is very big in apitherapy. Cuba is very big in apitherapy. And there's actually hospitals in China, and there's actually hospitals in Russia that actually specialize in apitherapy. And all, like I said, again, it's not just the bee venom. It is the royal jelly, the propolis, the pollen, and the honey. Sometimes some people actually use larvae, the honeybee larva in health and healing. I'm not so much into that, but I am into the also utilizing and incorporating royal jelly, propolis, pollen, and honey.
Now, in terms of all those substances that you're just talking about, like, which one is most powerful, or is there a most powerful one, or does it matter based on what symptoms you have in order to use the, propolis for this and pollen for that kind of a thing?
It absolutely depends on what you are treating for. They are all very powerful. It's all very powerful medicine. I'll give you an example. Royal jelly is very good for women who are going through menopausal symptoms, because in its natural state, royal jelly does contain estrogen, progesterone, and trace amounts of testosterone. It also contains all of the B vitamins in the correct proportion. So it really is a very healthy substance. It has a calming effect while accelerating healthy tissue regrowth. If you are an insomniac, you would want to take royal jelly at bedtime, because it really does have a very powerful effect in treating insomnia. On the other hand, pollen has an exciter. It's exciting the body. It's very energizing. It is 5 to 7 times more protein than beef. It is very rich in selenium. It actually is the highest substance known in its natural form in the selenium department. If you are having lackluster or energy issues, you get breakfast and lunch. People undergoing chemotherapy would want to take pollen because of the selenium content, which is essential for red blood cell production, which is frequently destroyed by chemo and radiation therapies.
Wow.
Propolis, on the other hand, that is a natural antibiotic, and it's a substance that bees gather from the young buds of trees and shrubs. They bring it back into the hive. They mix it with their own salivary secretions, trace amounts of wax and pollen, and they plaster it all over the inside of the hive. They seal up nooks and crannies. They polish out the cells where baby bees have just been born. Entrance of the hive. The word propolis comes from pro, meaning before, polis, meaning city, so before city. And as the bees land and cross over this barrier, if there's any bacteria on them or their feet, it is destroyed by the propolis. Now, for very effective as an antioxidant, more effective as vitamin C and vitamin E. It is highly anti-cancer, anti-tumoral, because of the caffeic or the plant esters, plant oils, and the essential oils of it. And it also will enhance the effect of antibiotic times.
Sorry, Rhea, you cut out real quick right there. It'll enhance the effect of what did you say?
Conventional antibiotics up to 8 times.
Wow, and that's propolis.
That's propolis.
So what did you say? It will enhance the ability for antibiotics to work? Is that what you said?
Yeah, well, yes, it actually enhances their effectiveness by 8 times, up to 8 times.
Wow. And does it affect the gut flora at all? Do you know?
Actually, I'm glad you asked that, because I was going to say I really like to call it a probiotic because it works with the gut flora. It does not destroy the good flora in our gut.
Okay. So that's That's interesting. So propolis, we've got, let's see, propolis, bee pollen, which you just talked about, and royal jelly. I remember hearing years ago from a friend of mine, before I was even involved in natural health, about how royal jelly would be fed to the queen bee, and the queen bee would live, 4 to 10 times longer, or whatever the percentage was. And they were kind of equating that to humans. And is royal jelly got a whole different set of constituents that are beneficial aside from propolis and bee pollen, or how does that work?
Well, absolutely. I mean, royal jelly, it's an amazing, very complex substance. It contains, like I said, the hormones of estrogen, progesterone, trace amounts of testosterone, which are very good for people undergoing menopausal symptoms, and for men that are undergoing prostate issues. It generally is a testosterone thing, and the royal jelly will help to suppress that. I mean, it's not uncommon that a man with prostate cancer is prescribed estrogen. The amount of estrogen in this substance is not enough for a man to go out and grow breasts, so there's no need to worry about that. It also will enhance the immune system. It does bolster the immune system. Now, the interesting thing about the young bees in the hive, nurse bees, actually produce in a gland in their head, and it is a substance that is fed to all of the bees for the first 3 days that the egg has been laid, but then cut off, except for a bee that is being made into a queen. She is derived from a worker bee egg, and the only difference is genetically is that she has been fed this substance, royal jelly, her entire developmental gestational period, and then fed to it her entire adult life. Instead of living 6 weeks like a worker bee will live, she can live for several years. Genetically, she's no different, but this royal jelly substance has turned her, it is worked on her genetics, making it possible for her to mate and to reproduce.
Wow, it's almost like kind of like colostrum. I kind of just kept thinking about colostrum and breast milk, but it would almost be the equivalent of like if a child drank colostrum his whole life, and it's kind of interesting like in that
Probably
way.
be a giant.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, that's so fascinating. So you said they'll live for 2 to 3 years?
Yes, and it was, years ago, it was not uncommon for a queen bee to live up to 5 years. But it seems like lately, and I attribute it to GMOs and overbreeding and systemic pesticides. Um, the queen bees just are not doing what they used to do. They do not live as long. They don't lay as much as they did. There's times when they'll actually just stop laying eggs 6 months after they're into their egg laying cycle.
Wow.
But that's a whole nother issue and a whole nother story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, do you think there are other parts of, excuse me, you mentioned like the larvae, and I'm wondering about like the honeycomb itself and the actual, maybe even the carcass of the bee itself after it perishes. Do you think that there are other substances related to bees and what bees do that A, we don't know about yet, or B, maybe we know about them, like all of these things you're talking about, but we haven't studied them? Are there things that we don't know about, do you think?
I'm absolutely sure of it. I mean, there's over 60 some odd components to a single bee sting, chemical components, and not all of them have been identified. So we have that part of it.
Uh-huh.
But actually, Hippocrates, who is the father of, or was known as the father of Westernized medicine, actually used dried bees, burned bees, and live bees in his practice, crushed bees. But that isn't a real good thing to use now that we know. Now, the larva is still used in some cultures and in some apotherapists to um, treat virility. I mean, for a man that's undergoing problems with PED, will be fed drone larva. Supposedly that helps. I don't know if there's any actual research behind it. But there's all kinds of things that we don't know. But what we do know is that a bee sting or bee venom therapy has never caused any permanent ill effect with anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying that there aren't people that have not died from bee stings. Absolutely, there are. But it's extremely rare for somebody to die from a bee sting. And we'll hear of stories of people. Recently there was a story of a woman that in I can't remember what country it was. Maybe it was Spain. that actually had done bee venom therapy, stopped, and then returned to it, doing 20 stings, and then she went into an anaphylactic reaction. The apitherapist did not have an EpiPen, and it was 45 minutes to a hospital. The woman died 2 weeks later, but what we're not sure of is, did she actually die from the effect of the venom, or did she die from intervention? And what I mean is like this: the several years ago, while I was living in Ventura, from almost front page news, um, a man had, the caption was "Man dies after being stung by bee," but then when you went on to read the story, it was a man in his avocado orchard that had gone out and he'd gotten stung by a bee and gave himself an injection of epinephrine and went back to his house, and his daughter had looked at the EpiPen and said it was expired and gave him another dose. And he died 2 hours later. That was, his death was not actually from the bee sting, but from the overdose of epinephrine, which causes ventricular tachycardia. And if a person is not given an intravenous push of lidocaine, there can be severe problems. Basically, what happens is your heart just bursts because of erratic heart rate.
Jeez, that's crazy.
So much for that. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
right.
is. But there's more people that actually have severe allergic reactions to peanuts and other nuts,
Right.
than they do a honeybee sting.
Yeah, yeah. I think the last time when I heard the interview you did, I forget where it was, but I think you were talking about how you've done, I think it was up to 26 or 24 bee stings in a day. Is that right?
On myself, the most I've taken was 64 bee stings
Oh, way
in a
off.
single treatment, and that was actually when I was in Europe. I was actually there for 6 weeks teaching doctors, patients, and caregivers bee sting therapy. And I was still not completely well at that point, and I was very tired and fatigued. I was doing 6-hour courses, and then I was doing speaking engagements at night, and I was just very fatigued. And I had another apitherapist give me 64 stings. But what I found was that it did not make me feel any better than doing 20 bee stings did.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Maybe that's where I got that number. But yeah, so you found out that, it kind of caps out for you, at least personally, with about 20, 25 stings in a day.
Right. And I have patients that some are happy getting 12 stings, and there's others that feel better, MS people that feel better doing 30 or 40 stings in a single session.
Wow. So when you sting someone that many times, how do you administer it, and where do you put the stings on that person's body?
When I first start doing bee sting therapy, I start off with a very small number. You don't start off with that many bee stings. And I do work on, especially for people that have MS or a chronic condition where they're going to have to be stung on a regular basis. I do sting on the sides of the spine, which is pretty much the most tolerable area of our body to be stung. And what I mean by that is you don't get the extreme swelling and localized reaction that you do if I was to start stinging fingers or knees, other joints that tend to swell up. And after about 6 to 8 weeks, when your body has built up a good enough antibody to the venom, then I will start branching out and gradually increase. Like I'll start with 2 stings, work up to 20 stings, 12 stings over the course of that time. And then I will start branching out to other areas like their feet, their knees, fingers, elbows.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So when you sting someone on their spine, on either side of their spine, like let's say they're getting 12 stings, would you do 6 on one side and 6 on the other?
Pretty much. They're pretty much directly across, probably about half an inch off each side of the spine, and up and down. I don't sting areas that are still swollen or inflamed from prior stings.
Oh,
And I will work up and down all the way from the top to the bottom.
that's so fascinating. I wonder why that area of the body, I guess through trial and success is how you figured out that would, that's the most tolerable place on the body, right?
Right. Well, several years ago, I had met an apitherapist. This is, like I said, several years ago, and he told me, if you can have a patient that can understand that the swelling issue, regardless of the size involved, is a normal thing, go ahead and sting them on their hands or their knees, as long as they're ready to accept the fact that they're going to swell. He said, but if you don't want to go through that, then just sting the sides of the spine. And it does hold true. It is the most tolerated area. You don't have somebody calling you up at 2 o'clock in the morning and say, "Oh, my hand is throbbing," and it's just a tolerated area. It's probably because it's not so fleshy on the sides of the spine. And another thing too, when you have people that you are treating with neurologic problems, a lot of this is coming through the spine, especially with people that have MS. You have the lesions in the brain, you have scarring in the brain, and it can also be in the spine. And what happens, what is very common, is that these areas become calcified. The tendons of the body start to become calcified. And so what you're doing is, because bee venom also breaks up scar tissue and calcification, one of the components of bee venom is hyaluronidase. That is what breaks that up. But what you're doing is, when you free up those tendons on the side, you're giving a person more mobility. And then again, with the least discomfort that you can have associated with a bee sting.
That is so fascinating, so interesting. Man, oh man, who knew there was so much about bees? And like you're saying, 60 components to the actual therapy itself, or to the actual venom itself, and we don't even haven't studied all 60 components yet. It's just
right.
It's fascinating.
They haven't identified them.
Yeah.
They've studied the effects of bee venom on the body, but what they haven't done is been able to identify and name all of these chemical components. I mean, the primary component of bee venom in its dried weight is the substance known as melittin, which has been shown to be 100 times more effective as an anti-inflammatory agent than hydrocortisone or cortisone, without the damaging side effects. And then, like I said, the hyaluronidase, that substance, what that does is it breaks down the hyaluronic acid that holds our cells and tissues together. It's like a glue, and that makes the venom more permeable. So the venom is not just staying right where the bee stings, it starts to spread out, and you can actually see it. That substance also breaks down scar tissue and calcifications and things like bone spurs and calcium deposits.
So interesting. Reyah, stay right there. We're going to just do a quick little spot for our academy. But man, after we get back, I want to talk more about like maybe arthritis and surgeries and things like that to bring more circulation and blood flow to the body. But if you guys want to join the live shows, this is episode number 592. So if you want to check out the show notes for this particular page as soon as we post it, you can grab the links at extremehealthradio.com/592. And I just wanted to sort of talk about our Extreme Health Academy. I'm not sure if you guys have seen this or if you know about it, but this is an awesome community that we have built. And we've got thousands of members inside the Extreme Health Academy. And, this is only for serious people only. If you really want to take your health to new levels, if you want to, maybe you have like just a nagging injury or a health challenge or something that you're trying to get on top of. Maybe you're trying to improve your digestion or your hormone levels or your sleep or your energy levels, things like that. If you really want to dial in your health and take your health to new levels, the Extreme Health Academy is for you. Every single month we're providing content for you to help empower you, to inspire you, to give you the tools necessary to really overcome and get on top of your health issues. So no matter what you're dealing with right now, we have people inside the academy that are chatting about it, sharing what's working for them, what's not working for them in the community forums. We're doing monthly Q&A sessions with Dr. John Bergman and myself, answering all of your health questions. We're adding courses every single month. Maybe you need like a roadmap to get your health and the healing process started. We have the entire roadmap of what to do every single day to get your health back on track. We've got a supportive, amazing community. We've got tons of resources. The Extreme Health Academy is an awesome place that we put together with Dr. John Bergman. And I want to give you a coupon code if you are interested. And the coupon code is EHR14. So if you go to extremehealthacademy.com and type in the code EHR14, you can sign up and get a free 14-day trial. So I wanted to make that available to all of you guys that are listening live, and I'll put the links in the actual show here. EHR14 is the thing. So if you want to go to extremehealthacademy.com, you can make sure and learn more about what we have to offer and how we can help you take your health to the next level. The thing that most people seem to love is the community, the monthly courses that we're doing every single month, as well as the monthly Q&A calls that we're doing every single week, that we do those live. So it's really an awesome place. So really excited to be able to offer that to you guys, and just really just happy, and helping so many people around the world. So just an awesome place. Make sure to check that out, extremehealthacademy.com. And Rhea, I wanted to ask you about surgeries and arthritis, and I'm wondering, like, if someone has like a knee surgery, or if someone has broken arm, does it help to have bee stings either before a surgery or after? What's the sort of protocol there?
Absolutely, it helps to have them before and after. And I'll give you two examples. The man that I was talking to you about that had the knee surgery, he had been doing bee stings for several months prior to the surgery, knowing he was going to at some point have to have the surgery. I mean, he was bone on bone. There's no growing bone back. There's no growing the tissue that is between the bones to cushion them. But what it did was, for the surgery, it actually helped him to get through the surgery and heal much faster than if he had not. Then I'll give you an example of somebody who had not had stings. A 76-year-old woman that was climbing out of a truck had fallen. This is a large semi truck. She had to get up in there to get something out of it for her son, and fell out and broke her arm. And the next day, I started stinging above the cast, as close to where I could reach to the actual injury. And she went back 4 weeks later, and the doctor took the cast off at that point and said that you've healed like an 18-year-old. So it did speed up the healing process. I would say it probably, for a 76-year-old woman to heal that fast, it probably cut her healing time in half.
Wow, that's incredible. So when you work with people for arthritis or joint issues, do you use the bee stings right on their joint, I would imagine?
I do, yes. And then there's also what are called trigger points or pressure points, acupressure points that you can sting for that as well.
And so when someone...
And again, the earlier that you get to treating these conditions, the better the result and the faster the result.
It's so interesting. So when you're treating someone with, say, arthritis, I'm sure you've worked with people with what they call osteoarthritis as well as rheumatoid. And have you noticed any difference in either of those two cases of arthritis?
Absolutely. The osteoarthritis responds faster. The condition will slow. Sometimes it halts it altogether, and a little bit of reversal to damage done. And with that, I also suggest a person to take royal jelly because of the effect that it has on bone tissue. With rheumatoid disease, any type of rheumatoid arthritis or disease, the condition actually may seem to worsen for a while with bee sting therapy. And an example, a woman that had actually been bedridden with rheumatoid arthritis for several years, her condition actually worsened for 3 months, and she stuck it out. And then by 6 months, it had leveled off. She was not worse, and she started to get better. And then by 9 months, this woman was actually able, with assistance, to get out of bed. Wow. So the rheumatoid disease responds, but it responds in a different way. And it's in a way that a person may feel like they're actually their symptoms are getting worse before they get better. This is known as Herxheimer reaction or a healing crisis. Mm-hmm. And it's not uncommon that a person actually experiences in a lot of different, especially chronic disease, such as Lyme disease or other diseases where pathogens are being killed off, that your symptoms may worsen before they get better. And the reason this is because you are killing off a pathogen faster at such an accelerated rate than what your body can actually get rid of these dead and dying pathogens, and they become toxins in your body, and they really can make you feel horrible.
Yeah, I'm thinking with rheumatoid arthritis. Well, I guess any kind of arthritis. Actually, it's almost like it's a systemic issue. We did a show just a couple days ago with Clint Pattison, who works with primarily with rheumatoid arthritis, and he's getting some really incredible success with that. And we talked about the gut connection and the proteins that
Yes.
are getting through the what are supposed to be tight junctions in the lining of the colon and the intestines, and so. I thought it was really interesting. So I'm wondering, like with bee venom therapy, if you were to use that on someone's fingers, for example, would you have to use it locally, like all over their fingers, on all the knuckles, on both hands, and or is it a systemic thing where you could sting in the back of the neck or in the back of the spine and have it affect everywhere?
It actually works both ways. You have a localized effect from the venom, and then you have a systemic effect.
Oh,
Even though when I do start people that are being stung on the sides of the spine, you do get a localized reaction, which is a welt and some reddening, possibly some itching, which can be pretty nasty. But then you have the systemic effect as well. It's not uncommon for people that are getting stung for one thing to notice something else because of the systemic effect of it. A woman that I was stinging that has MS, um, the systemic effect actually lowered her blood pressure, which is common with bee venom therapy, but that's not what I was stinging her for. But she did get that added benefit of having a lowered blood pressure. Her doctor had said to her she's never seen somebody just by changing eating habits or environmental issues have their blood pressure drop at such a level so quickly. So that
wow.
was attributed to the bee venom. So you do get a secondary effect, which is a bonus. She wasn't stinging for blood pressure; she was stinging for MS, but she also got the uh, systemic effect of the bee venom working on the blood pressure.
Yeah, I mean it's so cool, right? Because a lot of people I think our culture is sort of programmed us to have this idea that people have one issue and there's only one thing you can do for that particular issue, but the whole body works as a whole and it works by design like that. And so when you heal, like let's say you're working on your gut to help heal your gut, you're also dramatically improving your immune system, you're improving your circulation, which helps a ton of other different downstream processes. So it's cool that there could be some benefits that aren't what you're actually going for. What are some of the most kind of unique things you've seen people improve when you weren't really going for that one thing?
Um, Boy, some pretty unique things. One
Yeah.
of my clients has what is called, or had for 40 years, it is called I can't remember the medical term. It is commonly called a cauliflower wart.
Mm.
He was coming in to get stung for arthritic conditions, osteoarthritis, and some nerve damage from years of abuse and working and with his arms and his hands. And this cauliflower wart, over time it just sloughed off and disappeared. I did actually put some stings around it. um, that is one of the uncommon weird things, if you want to, if you will, for a lack of better words. So it's, and then bolstering a person's immune system or cholesterol levels. People coming in getting bee venom therapy, and then they go to their doctor and their cholesterol levels have balanced out to where they're good. So it's busting up cholesterol in the circulatory system. Um, let's see, another woman that was getting stung. She was diabetic. She was getting stung for issues of circulation. She was on the verge of having kidney failure. In fact, they had placed a port in her arm to start receiving dialysis. And her kidney function went to completely normal. She never did have to go on to dialysis. So it's things like that we see. I was not intentionally stinging her for kidneys. I was stinging her for circulation issues.
Wow. So interesting. So now for you, how often do you do bee venom therapy yourself these days?
Oh gosh, once in a while, maybe once a month, once every 2 months, and it's
Uh-huh.
generally because of an achy neck or arms, knees. I attribute that to age stuff, though. I'm 60 now, so now I have to look forward to these kind of things. But I'm feeling great. I actually at 60, I feel better than I did at 40. So that's a plus.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. I imagine it would be something that you could also do as a maintenance thing, right? You can kind of just continue to do it your whole
Yes.
life.
Yeah. And this is what I've done with the man that I was telling you about with the prostate cancer. When I started stinging him, it was 3 times a week religiously. He was
Uh,
very good about it. And then we backed off to twice a week and then once a week. And now that he's gotten his clean bill of health, we'll cut it back to once every 2 weeks, then maybe once a month, just to keep up on it. Another thing, I also sting animals. I sting horses. I sting dogs that have arthritic problems, and they respond very well.
that's so interesting. Well, I guess it would make sense, right? I mean, if they're mammals too, and
Yes.
that makes sense. What are the differences between the different types of bees, like bumblebees, wasps, these types of things? Do they have any sort of benefit the same way regular traditional honeybees do?
Yes, all stinging insects have medicinal properties in their venom. That includes fire ants. I know I have a dear friend that lives here in Vermont that would go to Florida in the winter, and she had spurs, bone spurs in her heels, and she got into a nest of fire ants, and they stung the hell out of her. But she did, in that one time, her bone spurs were gone.
Gosh, it kind of makes me think about different animals. Like you've heard of combo with the venom from frogs, and you've seen people use snake venom for different things, and fire ants, and even I think also being stung in the ocean by stingrays and things like that. I think what an interesting thing. I bet it would be a lifetime of study to figure out what's in all of these different venoms that of insects and animals that sting you, and being able to harvest that in some useful way for people.
Well, I think they are. They are doing some research with different venoms. The thing with snake venom, though, is that I would never take a snake and bite you with it. I mean, number one, the amount of venom that you would get would probably be lethal. And opposed to hornets and wasps and other insects that sting, honeybees are the most workable, and that's usually the most common insect that we use. I have used some yellow jackets because they can sting repeatedly to an area. You can get a few stings out of one yellow jacket versus one sting out of a honeybee, and then she loses it and then she dies. I do know apotherapists. I have not stung people with ALS for this reason, but people that have advanced ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease have issues with the tongue and choking on their own tongue and swallowing it. Would actually take a wasp and grasp it with a reversible tweezer and sting while lifting the tongue with a tongue depressor underneath the tongue, because you can get several stings out of it.
Wow. I imagine that would be really painful, wouldn't
Apparently not. I haven't been brave enough to do it on myself under the tongue. But I actually had a friend that had an infected and impacted tooth that I did sting on the gum for, which relieved it and started to destroy the infection. Um, However, that is a temporary thing. Usually, when you have toothaches like that, it happens on a Friday, and you can't get a dentist till the next week. So it did tide her over until she could get into a dentist and have the issue taken care of.
it? Have you ever worked with people with like cancerous tumors that are visible, like on the skin, maybe skin cancers or some other kind of tumors that's on the skin? And have you applied bee venom stings directly to a tumor? And if so, what kind of results have you seen with that?
Non-cancerous tumors I have, but unfortunately, a lot of people with cancer hear that word and they become fear-driven.
Hmm.
Do what it does, which is chemotherapy or radiation treatments, and they just don't stick it out. I did have a woman that had liver cancer. It was stage 4 when it was diagnosed, and she had visible tumors that
Sorry,
I stung. That actually,
sorry, Rhea, you cut out really quick. You said she had visible tumors, and then what?
I stung them and they actually shrunk. And she did not do any radiation or chemo. She was doing bee stings for 6 weeks. Went back to the oncologist. He said, chemo, your chances are less than half. She said, I haven't done chemo. I've done bee sting therapy.
What did you
And
say, Rhea? Sorry about that. You cut out once again. You said it was less than half the tumor size. Is that what you said?
no, the cancer cell numbers in her blood work were actually less than half than when she was diagnosed.
Oh,
And she
interesting.
did no chemo, no radiation, just bee venom. He dismissed it, saying that she was religious, that that's what brought it down. Then she was fear-driven, and she went off of the bee stings and started another form of treatment. And unfortunately, she did pass away about 3 months later.
Oh man, isn't that crazy? You see that so often, don't you, of people that are driven by fear, and you see that in the doctors, and they're talking about the clinical studies and the trials and all the success they've had with chemotherapy and radiation, and it really does scare people. I see it all the time. It's sad to see, isn't it?
It is, and they think the more expensive the chemo, the more likely is that they're going to survive. And in my experience in working in hospice for several years, I've actually seen people succumb to effects of chemotherapy versus the actual cancer. And
Hmm.
I see it. I've seen it happen so many times.
Yeah, I've seen it as well. I'm sure everyone watching and listening to this has seen it too, where you see people just breaking down, and young people with cancer. I mean, I have two. A friend of mine from high school died. I don't know how many years ago. She's 36 years old. Died of colon cancer, and a friend of my wife's recently just died of colon cancer as well. And he was 42 or something years old, and a 42-year-old body and a 36-year-old body, it doesn't seem like would succumb to cancer, right? I mean, it might succumb to cancer, but it seems like these treatments are expediting that kind of process of going downhill.
Absolutely, absolutely. And and I don't make claims of curing. I don't make claims of making a person live forever. None of us are going to live forever. But why not, for the amount of time that we do have left, at least be in comfort and be happy rather than begging for death to come?
Hmm. Yeah, I hear you. So, in terms of bees, do you have your own hives? And I'm sure you work with bees on your own property there,
Oh,
right?
yes. Yes. Right here at home, I have 5 hives. Let's see, I have three next door, and three here, 4 or 5 on this property. And then I have another location where I have 5 hives and another location where I have 1 hive. So that's a doable amount of hives that I do maintain. It's a little different keeping bees here in Vermont than it is keeping bees in California. It's much more difficult to get them through the winters here.
Yeah, I would imagine. Is it something where people have to get a license, or do they have to go through any sort of government authority to be able to have beehives on their property? If someone's living in like a rural neighborhood next to neighbors and things like that, do they have to go through any kind of process? Do you know?
Well, there's every area has its own laws. In fact, the cities are actually now opening laws to keeping bees up on the rooftops of apartment buildings because the bees are endangered. Some states do require that you register your bees with the agricultural department, and that is so that they can come and check to make sure that they are disease free and what's going on inside the hive.
Wow. That's crazy because I know that where we live here in San Juan Capistrano, Southern California, you can have chickens here, but in San
Right,
Clemente, where we used to live, you can't have chickens, but people did anyway, and kind of just didn't tell
right.
anybody. And the neighbors, as long as the neighbors didn't complain, but it's interesting all these different hoops you have to jump through, right?
Right. In some places, yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. So getting your bees through the winter, is that a challenge over up there in Vermont?
It really is. I mean, you have the days. I mean, we this past winter was awful. We didn't have any days where the temperature actually got much above freezing.
Wow.
Um, and honeybees they don't go to the bathroom in their own hive. So when the weather does get up to 48 to 50 degrees, they'll go out of the hive and do what's called a cleansing flight. They'll go out and go to the bathroom and come back. But unfortunately, I think there was maybe 1 or 2 days where the bees actually did that right up until sometime in April. I had most of my hives died, and I had about 4 of them that were still alive in April, and then they died. What they do is they cluster together very tight, and they move slowly over the combs, consuming honey, which produces heat. That's how they stay warm. But these days it actually warmed up a little bit. They broke cluster, but then the temperature dropped so fast that they couldn't recluster, and they probably froze to death.
Wow. So what temperature is, when it gets down to a specific temperature, is that when you start getting nervous about the bees? What's that temperature for bees to be able to live in?
Well, they can survive below zero temperatures as long as they are huddled together and have plenty of food. But the problem is that it went on for so long this year that they just didn't make it. I mean, some people had hives. I did have one hive that did make it, but other people, had a few hives that made it. But most people that I know lost all of their hives last year.
Wow, fascinating. Going back to the ancient cultures, I think it's interesting that you mentioned the Chinese, and it just kind of brought up a memory of myself of hearing stories that they would find honey in the tombs of the Egyptian pyramids or the different pharaohs that were buried in different places. Is that true? And is that honey still edible, do you think?
Yes, they found honey that was probably 5,000 years old, sealed up into these containers that were put into the tombs of, like you said, pharaohs and other notables. And the honey does not go bad as long as it's kept in a sealed environment. It's not going to go bad.
Mm-hmm.
I personally would not have wanted to taste it. Honey is hygroscopic, meaning that it draws moisture. It also will draw odors. So I wouldn't be your guinea pig to taste it. But apparently the honey was still edible, and it was not bad.
Wow. I mean, if it were...
Many times people see honey in a jar that starts to crystallize or get foggy looking, and that's an actual normal process. It is not moldy. It is not bad. Do not throw it away.
So if a person listening has honey in their cupboard, let's say it's raw honey, which is the kind I like to consume. If they have raw honey, is it possible for that to mold? Like if there are mold spores, which you assume that there are, it's impossible?
No. As long as it's pure honey, 100% pure honey, and it will not mold. And this is, I'll explain to you how it kills these mold spores and bacteria. Is it pulls the moisture right out of them. And these things need moisture to survive.
Oh,
that's why it is so great in treating bacterial infections. You pour it on the bacteria. It pulls all the moisture away from it. And then when it comes in contact with a wound or your own mucosa, there's a hydrogen peroxide reaction that the honey actually has with it.
So if you have a wound, it would be good to take internally propolis and bee pollen and royal jelly and honey and all of that, and then also apply it topically as well, I would imagine, as well as maybe the bee stings.
Absolutely, yes. You can use propolis tincture to quickly cure fungal infections. If you get a burn, you put propolis tincture on it, and it will numb it. It also protects it against infection.
Wow. So if you're going, like, I'm thinking just of different applications. If someone is going to the hospital and they get a little nick or something, you know how people are going to the hospital getting, staph infection, all kinds of crazy, bizarre, flesh-eating wounds and stuff. I would imagine taking some honey with you might be a good idea.
Well, they do have a thing now that pharmaceutical companies have to make some money off of it, so they call it Medi honey. It's pharmaceutical grade honey for whatever that is. It's ridiculous, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've always said if I lose a finger or something, I'm going to drop it in a jar of honey and head off to the hospital with it. In Italy, they commonly treat staph infections, flesh-eating wounds, with a propolized honey mixture. Treating antibiotic-resistant infections with it, and it's very effective.
It's so amazing. Isn't it just amazing? I mean, you've been studying bees your whole life, and do you get bored of the subject? I mean, it seems to me that bees are, you're shaking your head now, bees are such a fascinating creature, and what they do here on planet Earth is just so incredible. What they provide for humans and themselves, and they're just magical, aren't they?
They really are. I mean, like you said, I have never bored of this, and there's always something new to learn about them. I can go out to a hive and just I become mesmerized watching them go in and out of the entrance of the hive. It's almost hypnotizing,
I know they know
and
where
I
to.
never bore.
Yeah, it's crazy. They know where to go, and they know, like you said a couple of seconds ago, something about what was the kind of flight that they'll do, like a cleansing flight. Is that what you said?
Yes, that's when they go to the bathroom.
It's just incredible that they know where to go and they know their surroundings, and there's a little brain in there that's somehow telling them where to go and what to do and how much to get and who to help, and it's just so much going on. It's like when you see those videos online of insects or spiders or ants that are all going in a circle, or fish that are going in a certain pattern. Birds do it. I mean, it's just incredible.
Absolutely. Never, ever, ever tire or bore of it. And I never tire of seeing people get well utilizing substances from the hive.
Now, speaking of the bees, and what are your theories about, why there's this colony collapse disorder? What I'm sure you have some theories about that. What do you think?
Well, I don't think it's any one thing that is going on. I think a huge part of it is systemic pesticides, genetically modified food substances, and mites. I mean, it is just too much for the bees to handle. They're just being bombarded with all these different systemic pesticides. They're going to blossoms that are are sucking up these pesticides, and then they're ingesting them through the nectar and the pollen, taking it back into their hives. And then you have plants that have a built-in insecticide. They go to the plants and collect nectar and pollen from those. And then you have the mites in the bees that can have detrimental effects, just like a tick is infected with Lyme disease to a human.
Hmm. So, is there any issue, do you think, of using bees that are potentially getting the pollen from plants that have been sprayed with Roundup? Do you think there's any issues with bees getting their bee sting therapy from bees like that, or do we know?
I really don't think that there is an issue with the venom itself. I would be, if your bees are ingesting a lot of insecticide, they're not even making it back to the hives. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that part of it. If you're eating honey that is subjected, or the hives are actually in a location where there's a large amount of pesticide and other chemicals being used, or chemicals even being used in the hive, I would be very leery of it. And I talk about this when I go on speaking engagements, that if you are being treated for um, a neurologic problem or disease, you definitely don't want to be scraping propolis or other substances out of the hives where the hives are actually being treated with insecticides to kill off mites, because many of these things actually are neurotoxin. So we've got to be careful with that. Um, Bees will travel if they have to up to 6 miles, but they do like to stay close to home.
6 miles. So why don't they travel further, do you think?
They probably wouldn't make it back home.
Hmm.
6 miles is quite a way, and that's very rare that they even go that far. They like to stick pretty close to home, which is a good thing, because I know what's going on around this neighborhood. I used to like to keep my bees out on farms. I don't do it anymore because you just don't know what's going on in these farms and surrounding farms.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think so. It's really got to know the source of where your bees and your honey and your bee products are coming from. Um, are there any companies that you like what they're doing when it comes to bees, or do you? I'm sure you get all of your bee products from your own hives, but if someone's listening, are there companies that you recommend and tell people about?
Glory Bee,
Okay, you like them?
and out of Oregon, and they do have an option of organic bee produced substances such as the propolis and the royal jelly. I, you know, that's a pretty tough thing to claim organic. I mean, you have to go through a lot of government rigmarole in order to do that. But I've worked with Glory Bee for probably 20 years, and I've always had a good rapport with them. And I really do trust their substances. If you're getting fresh royal jelly or raw royal jelly, they will give you an independent analysis from other companies on the purity and what's in it, what's not in it. So they really are good people to work with, and their prices are very fair.
Glory Bee. I'm just looking at their website right now. I'm just going to pull it up. And so that's one place that you recommend people to go to. Glory Bee.
Yes.
Yeah, interesting. So you can make. Looks like they have all kinds of stuff. You can make your own candles, and there's different products there, and it's all just bee stuff, huh?
It's all bee stuff. They do have a line of foods too on the commercial side. But as far as bee produced substances, if you can't get your honey locally from a local beekeeper in your local health food store, then I would suggest you go through them. I always do suggest local, but royal jelly and other substances like the propolis, not a lot of people are producing that. And if you want to start taking these substances, that's where I would go to first is royal to the Glory Bee. But definitely for your honey and your pollen, you want to get these from a local source and a reputable source.
Mm-hmm.
Most beekeepers their honey is raw. They're not heating it up to these high, intense temperatures that are killing all the good stuff in it.
Like, how important do you think it is to get local? Like you were just saying, I mean, I would think local, organic, in season, or all of that stuff would be incredibly beneficial and helpful for someone. But do you also think that it needs to be raw, the honey and the propolis and the other bee products?
I think it's important. It's very important because honey and pollen both have living substances in them, and when you heat them to these temperatures, you are killing off all these beneficial enzymes and nutrients. I just, processed honey, I just call it expensive sugar water that's got a nice color to it.
Right.
But you're better off to eat your honey raw, absolutely. And your pollen, it should be removed from the hives twice a day, emptied into sacks and put it directly into the freezer and froze, because it is a living substance. And if you set it out and dry it, it becomes dead and pretty useless as far as I'm concerned. And then you mix your pollen and your honey together to become a substance called bee bread, and then your body completely assimilates all the nutrients in the pollen.
That is interesting. Okay. Yeah, I like that. I was going to ask you something about, gosh, I had another question. It's funny how these questions come to you while you're talking. Oh, about the bee venom itself. So, have there been any people that have sort of collected the venom and used it in larger batches in other ways than traditional getting a few stings by a bee? Like what's been done with the venom itself that you know about?
In the United States, the only approved use of bee venom is for desensitization to allergy to honeybee venom. And the way that is done, a collection device is actually stuck in the hive. It has electrodes, it's 2 plates of glass, it has a membrane over it. And when the bee crosses it, it gets a slight shock and it stings this membrane, depositing the venom on the glass, and then it's scraped off and harvested. It takes 10,000 bee stings to produce 1 gram of harvested venom. The only thing that they're doing with it is desensitization. However, I do know doctors that are actually using injectable venom for people that have different forms of pain, arthritis, and MS. But as far as using large batches of it, well, some people are actually using it in skin cream preparations to help with the skin or plump up the skin temporarily and other things. But I'm more on the medicinal side of it, not the beauty side of it.
What are some, as far as your patients go and people that you've treated over the years, like what seems to respond the best to bee venom therapy, do you think? What conditions? Probably arthritis?
Arthritis, Lyme disease, but it depends on the individual person that sticks it out. It doesn't come overnight. They may get some relief of pain very quickly, but as far as the condition, it may take several months. It may take 9 months to a year. In my case, with being stung, it took 2.5 years to get this Lyme disease to a place where I was actually feeling better.
Geez, 2.5 years. And how many stings were you getting every week for during those 2 years, 2.5 years?
Well, at first I was very desperate. I was scared. I thought I was going to die, and I would take several stings. I mean, I would say, let's see, 20, 40, 60, a minimum of 60 stings a week. But very frequently it was more. It was like 20 stings a day, 10 stings in the morning, 10 stings in the afternoon, 10 stings at night. So it just, because I had access to the bees, I was overstinging, but it's okay. It did not cause any damage to me, but it took a while. Things like sprains, they respond. If you get a sprain that day, they'll be walking on it the next day. So there's certain things that respond much faster than other things. And if you have a chronic disease, generally whatever it took for it to become chronic didn't happen overnight, and it's not going to go away overnight.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's what happens. People start thinking about these things like a pill for every ill, and then, they want to go do natural things, and that's great. But a lot of times it takes a complete change in lifestyle to prevent that chronic disease from coming back again, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it may be something that you have to do for the rest of your life. Generally, people that have multiple sclerosis, they may not have to do it for the rest of their life 3 times a week, but it may be something that they will have to think about doing for the rest of their life to keep it maintained.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, in terms of bees and bee venom therapy, what's exciting you in this world now? And then aside from that, are there any other things like we mentioned combo or from frogs? And are there any other things that are kind of tickling your fancy, thinking, "Oh, I want to look into that"? Or if you're staying in the realm of bees, what's exciting you in that world right now?
Oh gosh, it's always exciting in the bee world. Um, I really think that the elimination of bad carbohydrates and the leaky gut syndrome and all of that stuff that you kind of brought up a little bit earlier is really exciting to me. I'm seeing some great successes with it where people that have chronic inflammation or chronic pain in their joints have changed their dietary habits and cut things out and added certain things too, that it really is helping out a lot. So I'm pretty excited about that. Gut
Interesting.
health. I mean, that's where it all starts.
Yeah, I wonder. Gosh, there's so many different things you can use bee venom therapy for. How would you use it to improve someone's gut? Do you think?
Well, the propolis and the honey. Now, when people have, let's say they have issues with ulcers or they're taking tons of antacids, I will get them started. A combination of raw organic vinegar mixed with raw honey and some distilled water. And if they like, they can add some ginger to it because it's a very effective anti-inflammatory as well. And drink this tonic for a couple of weeks. And 9 times out of 10, they are no longer taking antacids. And propolis very well too. It really does heal the gut. I mean, there's scientific research showing how they're healing ulcers using propolis and honey.
Interesting. Are any other animals and their venom or their stings, do they excite you nearly as much as with bees?
No,
Just bees.
just bees because I'm not really, that is my forte is bees. I'm not saying that I'm locked within a box because I'm always open to other interesting things. The thing is I cannot handle snakes and their venom. I'm not out getting deep sea creatures to harvest or collect venom from them. Not even scorpions. But I am aware. I mean, I'm absolutely aware of some of the other modes of healing, such as using pharmaceutical grade maggots and healing gangrenous areas, cleaning it out, and also using leeches for more successful limb attachments for people that have had unintentional amputations due to an injury or an accident, where they reattach these limbs and then they use these leeches to go in. And what they're doing is they are injecting a saliva, a substance in their saliva is keeping this from clotting and going dead. So there's all kinds of interesting things out there.
Wow. Yeah, I know.
I mean, and using maggots, I mean, that's something that was done years ago to clear out gangrened areas. I mean, that's the thing about maggots. They're gross, they're nasty, but they will only eat out the dead tissue.
Yeah, so fascinating. I wonder how they do that. They just know what to do, don't they?
I guess so.
Yeah, I mean, they just are pre-programmed. It's like, they're Paul Stamets. I was listening to something with him recently, the guy that's behind, oh gosh, what is it, fungi.com, and he works with fungus and mushrooms and things.
I've read about him, yes.
Yeah, and he was talking about, fungus and things being able to eat up oil spills and, clean up the planet, and, some incredible ways of fungus and utilizing fungus to help clean the planet. I mean, it's incredible if we learn how to utilize these creatures or these substances, like what's possible for us,
Well, I believe it's limitless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. So, Reyah, if we want to send people to your website, do you have a website that's up and running right now?
I don't, but I do have a Facebook.
Okay.
And on my Facebook, I also keep a bee blog.
Oh, cool.
And I post on it pretty much every single day. I will post scientific research information, things that I'm doing, things that I am involved with.
Oh, great. What's the name of your Facebook page?
You use my name.
Okay.
If you put it up there with the correct spelling, you'll find it, and it says Bee Charmer as well.
Okay.
And also, I would suggest that if people are truly interested in apitherapy, to go and visit the website of the American Apitherapy Society. They have a yearly program called the CMAC, which is Charles Mraz Apitherapy and Course. And it's an intensive training course in apitherapy with doctors and registered nurses and practicing apitherapists from all over the world. There you go.
Yeah, look at that. American Apitherapy Society. And they have conferences, you said, all around the world?
Every year. And they actually will revolve around the country. This year it's going to actually be in Rhode Island.
Rhode Island. And so they're doing these conferences once a year all over the world.
Well, not all over the world, only in the United States. They'll go from East Coast to West Coast, and they'll either do Northwest or Northeast, and then Southeast and Southwest. But they do revolve around the country. There are other apitherapy organizations. There's Apimundia, which is German and French and Swiss and Romanian, where it is just this intense, huge, giant apitherapy conference that goes on once a year. And that's something that I hope to get to before I die.
Yeah. So this next one is going to be on the East Coast, you said?
The American Apitherapy Society is, yes. And there will be doctors there presenting, registered nurses. I'm also going to be a presenter. So yeah, that is a really great organization for getting loads of information on apitherapy. However, I do suggest, if you really are interested in bee sting therapy, to get some education on it. Just don't go out full-heartedly and start stinging yourself. I mean, there can be some consequences to doing that.
I would imagine.
It is not rocket science. It is something you can do at home, but with some basic education, which is essential. I really think that you can do this yourself, or find an apitherapist in the area that's willing to help you out. There aren't a whole lot of us actually stinging other people. There's several people that know about it, but there's not a whole lot of us that actually sting.
So what would someone want to search for? Apitherapist, maybe in their zip code or something like that?
Yeah, or apitherapists nearby. If they're a member of the American Apitherapy Society, I believe they can actually access all the different apotherapists in the different parts of the country.
That is so cool. That's so cool. Yeah, maybe someone would have to actually travel to go get this done. I'm sure that happens too, right?
I did. When I was in California, I had people coming actually from all over the world to get started on bee stings. They'd come and stay at my home for 2 weeks, and I'd get them started, and they'd be well on their way. Like I said, I've traveled. I spent 6 weeks in Europe. I was teaching courses and giving talks, and I spent 2 weeks in India. I've been to Canada a few times and several states around the country where I go and give speaking engagements on apitherapy. But there was a time when I actually had people, I had the space for them to come and stay to get started with doing this.
Wow, fascinating. So, are there any books or online courses, or are there ways for people to learn how to do this?
Yes. Good books. Pat Wagner, a dear friend of mine who recently passed away, bless her heart. She was known as the Bee Lady of Waldorf. She wrote a book called How Well Are You Willing to Be?
Okay, I see.
And that book is still available. It's a really easy to follow, do it yourself with the help of somebody else at home guide to doing bee sting therapy. There you go.
Okay.
And let's see, another one by Charles Mraz is Health and the Honeybee, which is a basic introduction in his own experience with bee venom. Like I said, he was known as the godfather of bee venom therapy in the United States. And there was another one written several years ago by a doctor by the name of Bodog Beck. The book is called The Bible of Bee Venom Therapy, and this is for a person who has medical knowledge. I mean, it's more geared towards the person with some actually quite a bit of medical knowledge. There you go. That's it.
Interesting. Okay. Wow. And so, which book do you think would be the best one to start with? Do you think?
I think they're all great, but the introduction to bee venom therapy, I would say to get the Health and the Honeybee, and then Pat Wagner's guide of bee venom therapy. How well are you willing to be?
Wow, good stuff. Good stuff. And as far as online courses or anything, do you know of anything like that, or?
Yes, if you can, you hang on a second so I can look up Stefan Stangasio's bee
Sure.
venom. He does a course online. He's a physician, a medical doctor out of Romania,
Oh, wow.
and he's very knowledgeable. Every once in a while, I consult him. He's really great.
Oh, wow.
Let me see here.
Yeah, no problem.
I will
Yeah.
see if I can get you.
Sure thing. For those that are listening on the podcast, if you want to grab, what we'll do is we'll put the links to everything that we talked about on this particular episode, which will be extremehealthradio.com/592. And we like to do that for people to let them know that, I don't know about you, Rhea, but when I listen to podcasts, it's really challenging because they'll mention really cool things that I'm really interested in. And I think to myself, oh, I got to make sure and grab that link or go look at that book or go do something like that. And a lot of them don't number their shows, or it's really hard to go back and find the links for things. So we try to make it so people can just easily find information. So what we'll do is put the links to these places at extremehealthradio.com/592. And that way, all you have to remember is 592, and that will get you. As soon as the show is published, we'll put those on there. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see this stuff. But if you're listening to the podcast, it may be a while until we get that show page going. But any luck there?
I just sent you a link. Can you see that?
Let me take a look. Did you send me a link on email?
No, I sent you a link on this conversation that we're having. There was a spot for me to type out to you.
Oh, cool. Let me see if I can. This program that we're using is pretty new, and so I don't know if I can see that. No.
In my where I can see myself talking, there's a little box that I could actually type a message to send to you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't see it on my end. Is there any way for you to send it to my email and I can put it up on the screen?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, that might be good.
And what I can actually do too is I can actually send you a link to Facebook, and if people would friend me, then I can actually invite them to like my Bee page as
Oh,
well.
okay,
And you
cool.
can put, you've got links for the American Apitherapy Society, you've got link for the books, and I will email you this link to Stefan Stangasiu Apitherapy Center in Romania.
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be awesome. Okay. Well, cool. Yeah, I'll put those in the show notes, and that way people can get links to them there as well. And let me just see if there's any questions in the chat room, and if there are, we can ask a couple. Just closing out the show. Let's
Okay.
see. Okay, Paul wants to know: is there a way to reverse an allergy to bee stings?
Yes, and it's by exposing yourself to minuscule amounts of bee venom. I've desensitized several people by using what's called a micro sting technique. And that's where I actually remove the sting from the bee. It is locked in a special and it is tapped, just very, very minuscule amounts. And over time, you increase it to where the person is actually receiving full stings without ill side effects.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Because a lot of people have sort of minor reactions, right? I mean, there are the odd people that get the anaphylactic shock, and that's kind of rare. But minor reactions are pretty common, right? And
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of people think that what is actually considered a normal reaction to a bee sting is actually an anaphylactic reaction when it's not. They'll get stung on their finger, and the next, which is actually, it's impressive, but it is a normal reaction to a sting. And with repeated exposure, that will become less and less over time. An anaphylactic response will happen within 3 to 5 minutes. The person doesn't feel right. And after that, they may pass out. They're grabbing at their throat. They can't breathe. And within 20 minutes, if medical intervention has not taken place, it could die. But if you're still alive an hour after a bee sting, you're most likely not going to die from it. Whatever is going on will resolve.
yeah.
But it is important to stay hydrated, to not sting on an empty stomach, and to make sure that you are taking daily doses of vitamin C spaced throughout the day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good tips. Good tips. Well, thanks so much, Rhea, for being on. I know we've been kind of going back and forth for, gosh,
Oh,
about a year now.
for a year. For a year.
I know it's crazy. It's crazy. We had a lot of different things come up for both of us, but I'm glad that you're finally made it on, and this has been a lot of fun. So I'm really, really excited about sharing ideas that people aren't really talking about or don't know as much about.
Well, I sure do appreciate you doing this and having me on your program. I mean, it is important to get the word out that there is not only one place to go to if you got a stuffy nose.
I love it. I love it. All right, Ray. Well, let's connect again, and if you want to send me an email, that would be amazing, and I'll put those
I'm
links up on
going
the.
to.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be awesome.
Could you also send me a link, if it's possible, to your program that I can put on my Facebook so people can reference to it if they like?
Sure thing. Sure thing. I will definitely do that. I'll send you that later tonight.
All right.
Awesome. All right, Rhea. Thank you so much, and we'll talk soon on email. Okay.
I hope so. You take care.
Okay. Thank you. You too. Bye
Thanks
bye.
again. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. All right, there you go, Reyah Carlson. What did you guys think about that? Interesting stuff, right? Paul says, nice. My son has progressively gotten worse with each bee sting. Hey, Paul, I would recommend maybe going to the website that she mentioned and maybe look for an apitherapist in your area. That might be, it sounds like maybe maybe your son is already seeing one and that's where he's being stung, or maybe he's being stung. Out in the field or outside or something like that. But hope you guys enjoyed that show. That was really, really cool. That was episode 592. And I just want to share with you guys something too. On our website, a couple of different products that we just put onto the store. And if you guys want to check them out, I think you'll really like them. These are products. The first one is the Stockton Aloe One. If you guys, I'm sure you know about all the benefits to aloe vera and what aloe vera can do for your digestion, for your body, for your healing. I mean, aloe vera has been used for centuries all over the world in every different culture and climate to help heal the body. And it's an incredible substance. It's kind of like it's like bee. It's like a magical substance, and it contains ungodly amounts of sulfur. And sulfur helps to increase oxygenation in the body. And sulfur is an incredible mineral and incredible substance to take. And aloe vera has an incredible amount of sulfur in it, along with something called ormus, which is like a magical substance. We did an entire show dedicated just to ormus. And aloe vera is, I recommend it if you want to improve your digestion, improve your skin, improve your beauty, improve your health, improve all different parts of your life. Aloe vera is just an incredible one. And unfortunately, with a lot of the different products out there that are aloe vera based, a lot of them are pasteurized, they're cooked, they're heated. This is frozen. It's fresh and frozen. It's incredible. So if you start taking this, I think you're going to really, really feel a difference in your overall health. And something else that we just added to our store too is the Joovv red light therapy. For those that understand mitochondrial function and how the mitochondria control genetic expression, you understand that one of the most powerful ways to affect mitochondria is through light. Frequency and vibration are other ways to affect the mitochondrial health in our body, but mitochondria are directly affected by light. And the Joovv red light therapy device is something that I use every single day. And I'll bring it up on the screen here. You can see a picture on our Instagram of how I use it right there. And it is really, really an incredible thing to be able to stand in front of this healing red light. And you can see, you can even do big, four-sided panels and all this kind of stuff with the Joovv. It's light therapy, and learning how to understand your light environment is one of the most critical things for your health. I see all these people that are focused on food, and food is not nearly as important as light, because we create ATP, we create energy from light and biophotons from the sun, and specific nanometers of light that we need to be exposed to biophotons from the sun in order to have optimal health. And the Joovv red light therapy device is something that I recommend to everybody. So make sure to check out that Joovv if you guys want to learn more about what we have in our store and the different products. And that's how we keep the show free. We sort of vet out and use and bring into our store all of the tools and different substances that we stand behind. So make sure to check out the Joovv red light therapy if you guys want to learn more. So there you go. Reyah Carlson on Bee Venom therapy. That's sort of what I love to do, is to bring to light things that no one's talking about, because you're not going to even in the natural world, you're not going to get this kind of information. You go to a natural health and natural healing, even a conference, and no one's talking about Bee Venom therapy. No one's talking about light. Everyone's focused on food and supplements, but no one's talking about these other ways of healing. And like we did a show the other day all about urine therapy. And I'm telling you guys that if you really want to heal, you have to open your mind up and look into these alternative health protocols and biohacks and ways to really help our body and to assist our body and to give our body another offer. Right? So when we're sick and we want to take a pharmaceutical medication or drug, we're just giving the body an offer. We're just saying, hey, use this instead of your own immune system. But if you use your own urine or aloe vera or red light therapy or bee venom therapy, if you use these other substances, you can really affect your health in tremendous ways. And it's another offer to the body. And it's a more kind, I would say, offer, because it doesn't have any, quote, side effects from the pharmaceuticals. When you get into drugs and chemicals, it's really a slippery slope. And I liken it to like being in a whirlpool, and you get hooked at the very top. You're just floating down the river, and all of a sudden you get hooked. And you get hooked usually by fear, and they want you to take this or get this test or have this level done. And then once they hook you in, then you're kind of like a fish with a hook in its mouth, and you're you're in their system. You start taking a pharmaceutical drug, and then you have to be monitored. So then you have to start going to the hospital, and then you have to be seen by the doctor, and then it just becomes this thing where their hook becomes a method of control of getting us to see them and to go to their services, when in actuality, if we avail ourselves of the internet and all of the information that's out there today, we can actually heal ourselves. We can do all the healing work in a much quicker, better way than going to a medical doctor, in my opinion. And so I hope you guys enjoyed that show. It was kind of a strange show in the sense that, like, I don't think we've done another show about bees, I think, a while back. I forget what that one was. I think that was more about colony collapse disorder and a documentary that someone did, but it wasn't about bee venom therapy. And so that's what we're trying to do, is to get this stuff out there, get it out there so people can learn about different modalities. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, there's something called the crown of thorns, and alternative health practitioners will use that to bring circulation to an area. Like, let's say have DMSO, and let's say you have like a Dupuytren's contracture in your arm, and your arm's really stiff, and you want to, or let's say you're working on a scar or something like that. You want to get some SSKI, some potassium iodide, and put some DMSO and rub that onto a joint, for example, to increase circulation and get some blood flow in that area and to help heal that. What you could also do is add some bee venom therapy to that area as well. And so there's a lot of different ways of utilizing bee venom therapy if you're looking to overcome something. And that's kind of what we want to do, is just to bring this kind of stuff out there. Perhaps we should do a show on combo too. I think that would be interesting, because I know a practitioner here locally who does a lot of work with combo, which is the poison coming from frogs, and claims that has really, really tremendous effect. Apparently it's really powerful and makes people throw up, and they go through Herxheimer reactions and healing crises from it. So, but maybe we'll look into that too. That might be kind of cool, or do some videos on that. So anyway, there you go. Episode 592. Thanks guys for joining us on the live show. If you want to join us on all of our other live shows, you can do that. Just go to our website, extremehealthradio.com, and on the homepage there too, you can see all the different upcoming guests that we have, and the live show will be there. So we're broadcasting live at 10:45 a.m. on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So if you want to join, ask questions, and join the chat room and listen to the show live, that would be cool. We have the ability now to do that. So join us live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 10:45 a.m. And for those that are live, I would really appreciate it if you could go over to iTunes and give us a review. We're trying to increase the amount of ratings and subscriptions and reviews on iTunes, and the more people that do that, the more the word gets out there about what we're doing on Extreme Health Radio. So make sure to do that if you haven't done so. We would really appreciate it. And don't forget to use the code EHR14 at extremehealthacademy.com. And let me just make sure there are no other questions. Elizabeth said, "Thank you for everything you are doing." You're welcome, Elizabeth. That's our goal, is to help as many people as we possibly can. Renee wants to know, are infrared saunas as good? Renee, what do you mean? Like, do you mean, are they as good as bee venom therapy, or are infrared as good as other types of sauna therapy? I'm not sure exactly what you mean. We have a sauna that we promote in our store that is just, man, I'm actually really, really bummed, because I haven't done that in a long time, because we just had twins, and I haven't used the sauna for about a month, and I'm just really, really looking forward to getting back into that. Let me put that in the chat room, extremehealthradio.com/sauna. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, so you want to know if it is good as red light. It's just different, Red light affects the mitochondria, and red light is great for building collagen in the skin. The sauna's more, that uses light as well, because it's a far infrared light that actually heats up the bones. The sauna therapy, I'm partial to sauna therapy, although the last few years, Renee, I've been really into studying mitochondria and biohacks and light and understanding our light environment, which is why you see me wearing these orange glasses. So it's kind of I don't know. I can't really place which one is better. They're kind of different in what they do, and it's like, is an ozone machine, is ozone therapy better than sauna? Well, it's just, it does different things, and so yeah, it depends. Red light is incredible. It's red light therapy. If you start doing some research, it's just, I mean, the benefits are just go on and on and on about how it affects your mitochondria. And yeah. So Elizabeth says, what water cleaning system do you recommend? I recommend it depends what you're doing. I recommend, and we use in our house, the Omica 12-stage water filtration system, and that's it's beyond reverse osmosis, actually. It's a 12-stage system. So what we do is, on our sink and our kitchen counter, we use the Omica 12-stage reverse osmosis system, and then we have a whole house filter from the Wellness Enterprise. That's in our store. I just put that in our store the other day. That comes in at the point of entry for our house. So we have that as a structuring device coming into our house. And then at the kitchen sink, we use the 12-stage Omica Organics. I love Omica Organics, man. I'm telling you, I put a link to them on our homepage. I've talked to Rafi, who's the owner there, and talk about an upstanding guy. He's really going after it, man. He's really intense about this stuff, and I really like that when it comes to quality control and things like that, and the products that he offers. And I've taken a lot of their supplements as well, and I'm really a big fan of what they're doing at Omica Organics. There's a link on our homepage if you want to help support the show. And then what I do is it's kind of complex the way we do our water. So we have the Wellness Enterprise coming in, point of entry. Then that's a structuring device. And then we have the Omica 12-stage reverse osmosis system on our kitchen sink. And then I take that water and I pour that into the Berkey water system. And then I take that water and I put it into a device that structures it even further. And then it sounds pretty complex, but it's really not. So Elizabeth, yeah, that's kind of what we do. So you say here, are you putting a link to both the systems? Actually, we don't have a link yet for Omica because we've been using the Omica system. Let me just do a link. Let me put a link here just to our homepage, extremehealthradio.com. And there's a link to Omica right there on our homepage under featured products. And let me put a link also to the store where guys, you ever notice that guys cannot multitask? I cannot type and talk at the same time. It's just hilarious. I'm just the worst multitasker. But okay, so let me grab this link. This is the Wellness Enterprise. We've had Patrick Durkin on the show a couple times. He's a cool guy. I really like him. So I put a link in the chat room to the water structuring device. You're welcome, Elizabeth. Yeah, anything we can do to help. I'm a big fan of making sure that the water that we bathe in, I have the Omica also water filtration on our shower too, because I think that's even more important than the water we drink, because more water is getting into our system through our skin, which is our largest organ. Let me just stretch. So more water is getting into our system through our skin than what we drink. So a water filtration system on your shower is most important, in my opinion, because also you're volatilizing those compounds as well. So any fluoride that's in your water, traditional tap water has, I think I've seen people say, and studies show that there's over 24,000 chemicals that are in tap water. So water is really important to make sure you're bathing and drinking only the best water, and that's why we use the Omica. But I really like what they're doing there over at Omica Organics. Cool stuff. Let's see if there's any chat room questions. I could take a few more questions if you guys want on our Facebook page, if you guys want to take a look. Okay, I don't see any questions. Maybe some of them are hidden. Some of them look like they're hidden. I can't find them here on Facebook, but yeah. So thanks, guys, for joining us. We really appreciate it in the live shows. I love doing the live shows because it's cool to get interaction from people in the chat room and asking questions and trying to get on top of their health. I think Elizabeth, you said Are you putting links to both systems? We had someone a while back say, like, what, how come you're using this really convoluted, way of filtering all your water, and how come you're using all these different systems? And the reason why is because we got the Berkey water filter first. So that's just something we've had. And that's in our store as well. We really like the Berkey system because it doesn't use any electricity. It just uses gravity, and they can filter out fluoride. It's an incredible system. So we had that first. And then we kind of I think we got a whole house filter second after doing some shows with Patrick Durkin. And then we had the Omica organic system. That came in third. And so I figure, why not just use these different systems? And so that's kind of the system we have, is just to take the water and further filter it. So, Sarah says, my new apartment has a lingering smell of air freshener. How can I get rid of it? Sarah, I wonder, lingering smell of air freshener. Whew. You got to go with you can go through a couple different things if you want to do something. You can get an air purifier. Beyond Nature says, use lamp burger to neutral remove house odors. Okay, that's interesting. Never heard of that. LAMPBERGER. We have an Air Doctor Pro in our store that I like, but I'm looking at this lamp burger. Is that more like a? Okay, that's more like another substance to put in to override the substance that she's already smelling. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can clean up the air. Let me share a link here that I think will be interesting for you. There's some things that you can do. So one of them is ozone therapy. You can do an ozone in your house, which I don't recommend, though, because you really shouldn't breathe it. There's also, let me do this really quick. Extreme Health Radio. There's a link I'm going to share in the chat room on YouTube. extremehealthradio.com/air. And that will take you to, and let me put a link to the Air Doctor Pro. We have this Air Doctor Pro in our store that I really like, and we use it in our room. And I'm so glad to know that our twins that were just born are breathing fresh, clean air, because we have that Air Doctor Pro in where the twins sleep, so in our bedroom, which is great. Okay, so Beyond Nature says it's a French invention from the 1800s, this lamp burger to neutralize, it doesn't filter odors, destroys them. Interesting, okay. So Beyond Nature, I looked at that on Amazon, and I'd never heard of that before. So this is one of the cool things about doing chat, is we can share stuff that, we've never seen before. I've never even heard of this, and I've been involved in natural healing, since 2003. Let me show it on the screen here so you guys can see it on Amazon. It looks to me like a fragrance kind of a thing, but you're saying it actually neutralizes the things. Haha, you say it's the king. It actually saved you. Interesting. So Beyond Nature, I'm curious. I'll look at more at this, and maybe we'll put a link in the show notes for this as well. But I will, if you can share a little bit more about what it does, that's interesting, because I shared a link in the chat room with a bunch of 5 different houseplants that help clean up the air as well. So, what you want to do is you want to open all your windows. Well, first thing is you really want to spend as much time as you can outside and avoid being indoors if at all possible for multiple reasons. You don't want to be indoors at all. It's destroying our health. So you want to make sure that you spend as much time as you can outdoors. Second thing is bring wildlife back into your home. So what you want to do is bring as many different plants as you can to your indoor environment, for many different reasons, as well as flowers. You want to bring all of this wild stuff back into your home. So, and then the third step is to get an air purifier, one that you trust. I am very, very impressed with the Air Doctor Pro. I shared that link on the YouTube chat. So make sure to get a good air purifier if you can. And then there's different things you can do too. Living Streams Probiotics has this probiotic that you can spray that actually kills mold. So you get like a fogger, and you can kill mold and bacteria and other viruses, or not viruses, but mold and bacteria that are growing in the air. And and you can spray that through a fogger. If you guys want notes on that or links, I can share that as well. Okay, Beyond Nature says, gosh, if it weren't, maybe you're a spokesman for the company. I don't know. It eats airborne bacteria instead of filtering it. Okay, that's cool. You know, Dave Asprey, too, speaking of bacteria, okay, you say it doesn't use electricity it eats it instead of filtering it. That's really cool. Okay, Beyond Nature, I'm going to look at that further. Essential oils as aromatherapy is king, too. Yeah, essential oils is really good for indoor air purifying and air quality too. We did a show a while back with a guy named Craig Carroll, I think, and he did a whole show about benzene. And benzene is in like a lot of this particle board glues, and it's in glues that is holding wood floors together. And he's put together a ton of research. And basically, his wife died as a result of benzene exposure, and benzene has been shown to be extremely carcinogenic, extremely toxic, and it's in all glues, it's in all of our homes. So this formaldehyde formaldehyde, benzene, all this stuff is living in our homes, you know. So you know, it's all something to make sure that we. Okay, so Sarah says, yeah, I'll look into that. Beyond Nature, thank you. Okay, air purifier plants, what about charcoal? Yes, good thinking. You know, on Amazon, I'll put a link to it. There are charcoal little pillows that you can get on Amazon. I forget what they're called. Thanks for reminding me of that, Sarah, on the chat. There are little charcoal pillows that you can get on Amazon. They're like half the size of a regular sort of couch pillow that you can put, and that also helps to clean the air too. I totally forgot about that. Beyond Nature and Sarah going back and forth. That's pretty cool. So Beyond Nature teaches meditation. That's cool. And which essential oils? So do you guys in the chat room have any ideas about essential oils? I'm not very familiar. We're going to have a guy on pretty soon from, what is the name called? Essential Oil Wizardry. Let me pick a link to that. I can't type and talk at the same time. So if someone wants to share Essential Oil Wizardry, he's a really cool guy, a doctor that runs that website that we're going to be putting or having on the show. Okay, so Sarah says Mosso bags. Are those the charcoal ones? I forgot about those. I think you're right, because I think I remember reading these some time ago. Yeah, that's exactly what they are. Good one. Gosh, you guys are on it, man. Okay, here I'm looking on Amazon too. Let me bring it up here so you guys can see. Mosso Natural Air Purifying Bag for your refrigerator. Okay. More powerful than baking soda. Refrigerator. Oh yeah, baking soda is something else you could do too. I know these charcoal bags you can. Yeah, I think they're all Mosso. Yeah, interesting. Very, very cool. Okay. There are so many things you can do. I really recommend doing as many things as you can for your indoor air quality, especially considering the fact that we're spending 90% of our waking life, or our life, I should say, indoors if you count sleep. So we're spending more and more time indoors, which cuts us off from the Schumann resonance, cuts us off from being grounded to the earth, cuts us off from fresh air, from biophotons from the sun. And then not only does it do all that being indoors, but then you're exposed to all the different chemicals that are in formaldehyde in your bed mats and in your bed and your carpets and all that kind of stuff. So we're cutting ourselves from everything that's good outside, and then we're exposing ourselves to all kinds of incredible amounts of chemicals, toxic, carcinogenic chemicals indoors. And then on top of that, we're living in an electrified house. So we've got EMF and blue light and all these things that are inside our house that are just destroying our health. So I recommend really working on your home if you can, and optimizing your home, man. That's the key. And even if a home is fully optimized, I still recommend spending as much time as you can outside. One of the things that I want to do is I want to figure out a way where I can sleep outside. That would be something I'm working towards. Figuring out a way to sleep out in the backyard. You know, I've got a great bed, but I want to sleep out in nature and be woken up by the sun. I think that would be great. Elizabeth in the chat room says, I've heard about something called Frankensteins. What do you mean by that? Does that mean... I'm not sure what that means. Frankensteins. Is that a product? Sarah says, I spray the entire home, all walls, soy vinegar, but think I need to do a few times. I have MCS. It's really hard. Yeah. Oh, you meant with vinegar, not soy. I was just thinking that sounded kind of strange. Do you know something about frankincense oil? I'm not an expert in essential oils. I know frankincense oils, people use it for Elizabeth, for cancer. I know that for sure. You know who's an expert in oils? Let's see, Dr. Z. Let me bring a link. Dr. Zielinski, I think he's been on our show. Insky. And he's got like an essential oil program. I don't have the link. Let's see. He was on back in 2016. Gosh, how does time fly, right? Let me put a link in the chat room to Dr. Z, and you can learn about his essential oil program. I don't know exactly what it entails, but I think you can. He's got a course or some kind of thing where you can learn more about essential oils and how to use them. So, yeah, you guys are just on top of it, man, in the chat room. You know your stuff. This is really cool. All right, well, that's 2 hours in the books right there, all about bees and modifying your home. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that show. If you like the work that we're doing, please consider buying through our Amazon link on our homepage. There's a link on Amazon, or consider donating to us on a monthly basis on Patreon. You can give like $1 a month or $2 a month or whatever you see fit, whatever you think is good, whatever you think we're worth. How about that? If you think we're doing good work, then you can give us whatever that equates to you. You don't have to though. Just sharing our show on social media is a tremendous help. So I really, really appreciate that. So, if you want to go to our homepage, you can see some different ways for you to support the show, whether it's Patreon, whether it's Amazon, or going to our store or anything like that. We really appreciate it. That's how we're able to keep doing 590 shows for free. So you guys are amazing. So anyway, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you. What was your name? I forget. Beyond Nature, for being in the chat room, and a bunch of other people too. I really appreciate this so much. Love you guys, and we'll catch you on the next episode. In fact, tomorrow's episode is going to be available. We're going to be doing that with Dr. Stephen Gundry. So that show was supposed to be today, but it's going to be tomorrow. So it's going to be at 10 a.m. Pacific time, and I put that on our show page too. So if you want to join the live show and the chat and all the people chatting and sharing stuff, you can do that. So that is our show. It's going to be Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, 10:45 a.m. Pacific time on Extreme Health Radio YouTube and Extreme Health Academy Facebook. So love you guys. Let me give you the show notes once again at extremehealthradio.com/592, and I'll do my best to get all those links that all the good people were sharing in the chat room on YouTube. So thank you all. We love you so, so much. And let us know if we can ever help, if there's ever anything we can do for you, if there's ever anything we can help you with. Please let us know. Answer any questions about the Academy or your health or anything like that. Please let us know. So, all right, guys, love you so much. And we will talk to you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific time.
No material on this blog is intended to suggest that you should not seek professional medical care. Always work with qualified medical professionals, even if you educate yourself in the field of live food, nutrition, and alternative medicine. I'm not a doctor, nor am I offering readers medical advice of any kind. None of the information offered here should be interpreted as a diagnosis of any disease, nor an attempt to treat or prevent any disease or condition. While information in this blog is discussed in the context of numerous conditions, it can be dangerous to take action based on any information in this blog or to start any health program without first consulting a health professional. The content found here is for informational purposes only and is in no way intended as medical advice, as a substitute for medical counseling, or as a treatment/cure for any disease or health condition, and nor should it be continued as such. Always work with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, prescription drug use, lifestyle, or exercise activities. This information is provided as is, and the reader/viewer assumes all risks from the use, non-use, or misuse of this information.